talk about, especially if you've been binging on your social media. How many hours do you really spend? And what should the next generation tackling of social media be all about? That and much more is what we'll discuss on the show today.
We should have a little unveil of how much we both are spending too. I'm Toya Singh, joining you live from New Delhi. Let's take a look first at all of the headlines. First up, as we just discussed, we're going to be taking a look at social media and its usage, particularly in the younger generation, as Australia plans to ban those who are under 16 from using different social media apps. Is it a solution or is it just a temporary band-aid? We're going to be taking a look at this digital dilemma by applying it in the Indian context. Can India follow suit, and should it follow suit? That is the big question.
Also coming up on the program is a fascinating chat with the cast of Freedom at Midnight. It's going to be out soon. An electrifying story of India's independence. There is Siddhant Gupta playing Nehru, Gandhi's legacy being portrayed by Chirag Vohra, Patel's pioneering spirit by Rajendra Chawla, and Jinnah's dilemma by Arif Zakaria. We sit down with the cast.
And remember, the Breakfast Club has been bringing you insight into the continuing air quality dilemma across the country, and we're focusing in particular on the Delhi NCR region today that continues to choke on hazardous air. We'll be bringing you an AQI check-in of the entire region right here on the show.
But the question with AQI really is that why is it so high this time of the year, with farm fires being considerably down? Questions again being raised on vehicular pollution, and it's accounting to over 50% of the pollution levels in Delhi NCR. What is this environmental emergency that we are looking at, and inside?
And after that, if you're in a region where you can ride your bike and you can ride it outdoors, then we have the right story for you, because we're going to bring you a review of the Bear 650. It's the ultimate retro modern scrambler. At least that's what it promises to be. This is Royal Enfield, and we'll bring you whether or not their new motorbike is up to the test. We'll be riding into the wild with it. And of course, as usual, Overdrive will be giving you their verdict.
All right, let's start with what's been happening and legislative changes that have been proposed in Australia that could well have a ripple effect across the globe. Australia is now making waves with its plan to ban social media for anyone under the age of 16, citing growing concerns over impact these platforms have on young, developing minds. The move comes at a time when global conversation around children's mental health are intensifying, and the data supporting the decision is compelling. However, research from Australia's medical community has shown that excessive social media use in teenagers sort of correlates with the doubling of risk of anxiety, of depression. There are body image issues. There are lots of host of issues that really pop up. But it's more than just mental health. The platforms are contributing to poor sleep, issues with concentration, and even influencing critical aspects of brain development during these formative years. That's younger, under 16. But while Australia considers an outright ban, which has not been spoken about anywhere else in the world, let's take a closer look home. Here in India, the numbers are equally concerning.
Okay, so let's take a look at those numbers. You have a recent study by Local Circle. We'll just pull those numbers up for you. Nearly 47% of kids, this is all based on the Indian data, 47% between the ages of 10 and 17 say they've spent more than 3 hours daily on social media, OTT platforms, and online gaming. These are their parents' numbers. This screen time isn't just cutting into their studies, it's contributing to a rise in behavioral issues like aggression, impatience, and in several cases, depression. The same report also indicates that 60% of the parents who were surveyed feel their children are addicted to social media, and they're expressing concern again and again over the ease of access. Now, it's to inappropriate content, it's to the growing trend that we're seeing again and again of cyberbullying. That's something we've talked about right here on the show. Can a ban, like the one we're seeing in Australia, can it actually solve the problem? Now, that same local circle study that we've quoted for you, found that 80% of parents do want stricter regulations on content access right here in India. They are advocates for more robust parental control tools. But what kind of controls should we be looking at? What should we actually be looking for, especially in a world where the internet isn't going away anytime soon? You want your young kids to know how to use it. Social media itself isn't inherently bad. It's a tool. Many businesses use it every single day. So how do you balance its usage? How do you make sure it doesn't become an addiction? And what does good social media policy look like? That's the question we're going to be taking a look at today.
And we've got two wonderful guests with us this morning to actually decode this. Joining us is Aprajita Bharti. She's the founding partner of the Quantum Hub Consulting. Now, what TQH does is, it's a public policy research firm which works on technology policy and has done multiple studies on children's usage of social media in urban and rural areas in the Indian landscape. So she has massive insight into what's really going on. Also with us is Sachin Taparia. He's the founder of Local Circle. And Local Circle, we brought out some of those, details from the study that they have done. And it's a platform where citizens and consumers sort of get a pulse check of sorts. It's an aggregator where citizens participate and, we get a better understanding of what's really on their mind. Thank you both for joining us. We just brought out some details, Sachin, of the study that you have done. Not very staggering or not very surprising to sort of understand that parents want stricter regulation. But what I want to understand from you is, did you go out and ask for a clear ban? Was that one of the question? And is there any clear insight? Because we're seeing the world divided on this issue. We're looking at stricter control versus ban. In India, what are the surveys throwing up?
So we've been doing this survey for about 5 years, Sonal. And, we do this survey because throughout the year, we see parents expressing this concern about children, being addicted to social media, online gaming, OTT platforms. And this has really worsened post-COVID, because that was the time when kids were spending a lot of time online, especially, doing online classes in school. And a lot of activity was going on the side, because they couldn't go outside. They were actually spending a lot more time on the gadgets. So back in 2019, the clear, ask from the parents, majority of the parents, was that the minimum age in India should not be 13, but it should be 15. Now that has changed, with COVID and everything else. And what we are seeing now is an ask which basically is saying we need better regulation, we need better control, because of all these concerns that you showed from our survey about aggression, about impatience, lethargy, depression. A lot of parents are concerned that the kids are actually not going out, as much as they used to back in 16, 17, 18. A lot of time is being spent on gadgets. And if you look at that first statistic, kids really, they cannot take their phones to school. And when on a school day, they literally have, about 6 to 7 hours of time at home after they come back from school. And we have over 10% parents who are basically saying that kids are spending more than 6 hours on these 3 types of platforms. And about 36 or 37% parents saying that they're spending up to, between 3 and 6 hours. If you go with an average of 4.5 hours, basically, that means a lot of children aren't actually going out to play, whether it's cricket or football or other games, other activities like dance or music, and they are actually, spending time on these types of platforms. So huge concern. The ask now is basically, from a parent's standpoint, is how can we regulate this better? How can there be more parental consent? And I think some of this is now in the legislation, in the Data Protection Bill, where the Government or Data Protection Act, where the government is saying we want to regulate this. Now it's a question of, how do you make it work? Do you do Aadhaar authentication of parents, where, there is a form that you sign up for, and within that form, you're taken to an Aadhaar authentication website of UIDAI, you give your consent, and only then a child is accessing that particular social media platform or OTT platform. So I think that's what India needs to work the mechanics out in the months to come.
Okay, so Sachin, when you're framing that, using words like control, using words like regulation, and that kind of takes us to our next question. Let's go to Aprajita to understand a little more here. Aprajita, can I ask you, there are two things if we're looking to solve for. One is the amount of time young people are spending on social media. The other is the impact of social media on their self-esteem. If we just look at that second one, can you actually bring us a global perspective? Are there any nations that have formulated successful policies where you have maybe studies coming in that show that their younger adults have high self-esteem even though they are using digital media? What does it actually look like to set up successful frameworks?
Hi, Toya. Thank you for this question. And I think it's very important what you asked in terms of what's happening globally, because I think every context is very, very different. For example, Sachin himself said that in India, kids are not allowed to take phones to the schools, right? Whereas in Australia, they've actually banned taking phones to the schools just this year. So parenting is very different, schooling is very different, access to devices is very different. So while, yes, there are studies globally, and there is a lot of conflicting evidence, in fact, in what is the precise impact of social media on children. It depends so much on the context. And when it comes to India also, for example, India is so diverse, and I have actually seen Sachin's survey as well. I think most of the audience which has responded to this survey is from urban areas. So at TQH, we also do a lot of work in rural areas, in rural Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh. There we see that actually children only get access to phone 1 to 2 hours in a day, and sometimes they are only, mostly using it for homework that actually the school is given, right? Because there is so much dependence on phones, etc., for education also. The shared device usage in low income communities in India, not just in rural areas, but also in urban areas, is so high. We did a survey of 5,000 children, and these were typically people from low income communities, and they were between the age of 13 to 18. We found that lower age teens, 13 to 16, actually 70% of them did not have a phone which was their own. They were borrowing it from their parents, elder brothers,
Shared
or
devices,
sisters.
yeah.
Yeah, and after 16, etc., many of the kids were getting their phones. So a lot of exposure that children are getting to social media in India is actually on phones that are already owned by their parents. So there is a sense of parental control, even though you may not have right now, the kind of Aadhaar authenticated parental
Yeah.
control that Sachin is talking about. So I think context matters a lot. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in India, we don't have conclusive data in terms of how it is impacting teens from a broad diversity perspective.
Okay. I think, Aprajita, the addiction to screens, addiction to social media is something that nobody's sort of debating that is not happening. It's happening to adults. It'll only sort of happen, more. And these are adults who sort of grew into social media later in life. Kids who are born into it will have a very different interface and very different life and interaction with social media. But let's, for a moment, focus on the ban itself. Last time you were on the show, we were actually talking about a ban. A, is highly impossible to implement, and B, is that really the right way to go? We've spoken about other countries, US, EU, etc. They have all gone towards parental control. But what is the difference really, if you can shed some light, between ban and parental control? Something that only Australia seems to be very, very keen about.
Absolutely, Sonal. And I think when a government wants to regulate anything, it has many options, and ban is usually the last option, right? I mean, government is trying to ban many things For example, tobacco is not banned, it's just taxed higher, whereas drugs are completely banned. Similarly, I think we need to ask ourselves whether social media is at that stage where it needs to be banned, right? And second, is it effective to ban something? Now, we work with children very closely. I run two organizations apart from TQH. I run YLAC, which is Young Leaders for Active Citizenship. And we found that students are actually using Google Docs these days to communicate with each other. Now, this is not something that you and I will do generally, but because they are trying to circumvent their teachers, their educators, they are doing that. Many times we have found in our surveys that actually some students are also using gaming platforms to chat with their friends, or if they are in a relationship, how do they hide it from their parents? They'll actually do all of that. Now the question is, okay, adults decide, let's ban social media. What happens then? You will have a ton of apps which will really, go at lengths to say that this is not a social media app, and adults will only realize that something is being used, to solve the same purpose when things go wrong. And we have seen that with other kinds of ban. Spurious liquor
Right.
deaths are rampant in regions where alcohol is banned because it's not regulated. So I don't think it's a good idea.
Correct.
And even in Australia, if you actually see, there is no specificity right now on how the government is going to implement the ban. The Prime Minister has made these statements many times now, but the bill is not there for the public to see. In fact, in Australia as well, I think over 100 academics have written to the Prime Minister and said that this is not something which is feasible, and also not the best way, because what happens is that if you ban something, people will still circumvent and they will still be on social media platforms.
Figure out a way to
Platforms
circumvent.
will
Yeah.
not even
Yeah.
acknowledge that they are on the platform.
But
So you are actually
Aprajita,
taking
just tell us
the
what
Yeah.
does then what does the answer look like? And the reason why asking you this, because you pointed to Australia, you have the Children's Rights Task Force there arguing that it's social media platforms that need to put regulations in place. And we've seen safety measures of some kinds already be introduced to, for example, Instagram. So we've seen one example of that. What does successful regulation look like then? Do you think that it should come from the side of the platform? What is your thought on that?
So, Toya, I wish I had the answer to this. I would be a billionaire by now. But I think, I think in between approach, some approaches we know are already kind of working. For example, there is an age appropriate design code that the UK legislated, that has also been legislated by California and New York, and a few other states in United States are also thinking about it. Now that has put a lot of pressure on social media platforms to design their platforms better. So, you saw that, for example, Instagram has recently launched teen accounts, Snapchat has something called a family center. Many of these, I think YouTube also has something similar. So many of these platforms are also
YouTube
coming up
Kids.
with
Yeah.
better design features to basically make sure that students and kids have a safer experience. However, I do want to say that even that is not 100% solution, right? And I think, unfortunately, the difficult answer to this is that you have to make children also resilient. It's almost like inoculating children by giving them enough curiosity, giving them enough information, saying that whatever you are seeing online is only a fraction of truth. It may be also untrue at given some points. This is how you need to keep
Yeah.
yourself safe. And these are the tools that you have. So that is equally important. The problem is that that is a lot more implementation heavy. And obviously, it's a little bit harder to measure as well. But unfortunately, governments have not done enough on that. In India, for
And it
example,
puts the onus, Aprajita, completely on parents. The problem is it puts the onus completely on parents, and it sort of eludes all these platforms of any kind of responsibility, which is where we want to see some shift coming as well, right? And as a parent, I must say that one is very torn on this issue on which way this will go. I think we have time for one last question, and I want Sachin to come in. So bans historically haven't really worked, right? We know France applied a ban which had to take it back because kids figured out how to sort of get their way around it, and dark web searches went up, etc. So enough data and more says that a ban, even if applicable, even if Australia, they say that they'll be able to put it into place by next year, December, and they're doing some trials on how to make it happen. Even if they're able to make it happen somehow, will be difficult one to implement in a country like India. But then the question, Sachin, is this, on how do we inculcate better habits around social media? And please don't start by, say, modeling. It puts a lot of pressure on parents.
No, actually, it's there is an action that needs to be taken by all four parties here. Actually, five parties, Sonal. The first one is basically something that the government should do, which is a proper implementation of parental consent. So if I am approving my child to go on YouTube, that is known to me, approved and done by me, right? But if I have not approved my child to go log on to a Discord, right, then it is not done. So that's, I think, the first level that the government should do from a regulation and an implementation standpoint. Then you have, the role that platforms can play, right? So, for instance, many children who use Instagram have, one primary account and 3-4 more secondary accounts. Instagram knows that this child is accessing these 4 accounts from the same device, right? Why can that not be handled better? And why can, that information be handled in a way where it's available to the parents, where, Instagram is putting, more controls around a practice like this, right? Similarly, the content that is flowing, as a OTT platform or a social media platform, who is watching based on the content. That on that same shared device right now, it's the parent who is watching because they're watching, let's say, a video, a news video, right? At the same time, when it's a nursery rhyme being played, that it's a child that is watching, right? Now, what ads you show in that account should be based on the content that is playing at that time. So that way you're not showing age inappropriate ads to children, right? So I think these are solutions that the platforms can implement. Then there is the parental bit, right, where many parents tend to, and we have, heard this on our platform, is, if you have an iPhone and it gets old, right, and you have a 12-year-old at home or a 13-year-old, parents tend to give their old smartphone, which they consider old, to the child, right? Instead, why would you not give them a feature phone? So if they were to go to tuitions, they could, call you and let you know that they've reached or, what the status is, rather than giving them a smartphone, right? So these are things that parents can do, which is, some self-control, some awareness, and some regulation at the parent-child level, essentially, right? And then children and schools who also have to do their bit in terms of implementing. Many schools in Delhi NCR have a policy that the children that are studying at their school should not have a social media account till the age of 13 or 15. But they're really not enforcing, any of that. There's very little awareness that is being imparted to children about, what are the do's and don'ts of social media, all by the platforms, by the parents, as well as by the schools. So I think the whole ecosystem has a role to play here.
I like that point.
Their bit.
I like the point that everybody has to play their part, and just a simple ban perhaps might not be the answer, especially in the context that Aparajita was putting out in an Indian context as well. But the takeaway over here is to find out a healthy relationship with social media. I think we are just beginning to understand, and we are just figuring it out. So setting those boundaries for yourself and in your homes perhaps, and then further on to schools, communities and workplaces is where it will all begin. But thank you both for joining us on this very fascinating chat. Going back to dumb phones, we've done an episode on that. Go back and watch it. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I love the word Aparajita used a little earlier, resilience, and teaching younger people how to be resilient when they're using social media, because it's not just a conversation around social media. Harmful images we see in our daily lives, in advertising, advertisements too, and print advertisements too. So resilience is really a key word here. Let's head into a break. On the other side of the break, we're taking you from this story to an entirely different one. We're bringing you a check-in of the Delhi NCR region. Our story and our coverage around AQI and the way in which its dipping continues. We'll be bringing you numbers from Delhi, from Noida, from Gurgaon right after the break. Welcome back. This is The Breakfast Club, and we're now going to take you to stories that are taking place as we speak across the entire world. We've got a lot of animal action taking place on the show today. We're starting out with a baby goat that found himself in a bit of a pickle. He was stuck on the side of a cliff in Hawaii for 4 days, but just as hope began to fade for the little guy, the power of social media stepped in. A group of hikers in Honolulu came to the rescue of the goat, climbing the cliff face. You can actually see it in the visuals. This is where it had been stranded for 4 days.
On Sunday, 300 surfers over 50 years old attempted to break a world record with the most people riding the same wave in the Brazilian city of Santos. The event was organized by local school focused on teaching surf to people aged 50 and over. Participants said that the sport keeps them healthy and also helps them with issues like depression and solitude.
And we promised you a lot of animal action. As we speak, researchers have been very, very impressed by what they call the inventive and expressive use of a hose. What you're looking at right now is the Asian elephant Mary at the Berlin Zoo, who was observed using that pipe that we're talking about, the hose, to shower herself using a very unique technique.
The Hungarian inventor of the Rubik's Cube on Saturday celebrated the 50th anniversary of the creation of the spatial puzzle that has become a global craze. It has sold 500 million units and has 43 quintillion possible combinations.
And what you're looking at is the 2024 MTV Europe Music Awards, which saw big wins from pop stars, but it also saw a heartfelt tribute from Rita Ora to Liam Payne on Sunday. The British singer-songwriter led a tribute to the late One Direction member. You remember he died last month after falling from a third-floor hotel room balcony in Buenos Aires. He was 31. A visibly emotional Ora, who collaborated with Payne on the 2018 song For You, said He was a big part of the MTV world and my world, and I think a lot of yours at home and everybody in here tonight.
And staying with the MTV Awards, the EMA red carpet in Manchester saw Tyler, Rainesh, Shawn Mendes and amongst many other stars making an appearance on the MTV Europe Music Awards red carpet at the Manchester's Co-op Live Indoor Arena on Sunday evening. All right, from all that star-studded news, let's take a look at the pollution meter. We're tackling the latest air quality updates from across Delhi NCR, and the numbers are alarming. The national capital in Mundka area, the AQI is reported to be well above 280 over there. As you can see, it's in the very unhealthy category, while Anand Vihar has crossed the 300 mark as well. It's around 314 as of now. Narela, slightly better at 254. All this been given credence, or the numbers looking relatively better than last week because of wind movement.
Also relatively better than its neighbors. You're looking right now at Noida, where we're seeing hazardous numbers coming in. As you can see, 828 is the current read. We're located in Noida. Try not to step out. It'll cause severe respiratory problems. Gurugram, meanwhile, is relatively better at 218. It still falls, though, in the poor category. Remember, again, take necessary precautions to minimize any kind of exposure. Wear your air mask when you're stepping outside. And if you have an air filter at home, this is the time to use it.
All right, also, so get your air purifiers out, ensure that N95 is what you have even inside your car. But what exactly is the reason behind this smog? The national capital is choking, experts are sounding the alarm. It's like yet another year, but slightly different, because according to the recent data, the average winter pollution level has actually increased across Delhi, with PM 2.5 particles reaching alarming levels.
Okay, so what do experts say is part of the causes here? What we usually talk about is crop burning. But what we're going to hear today, the key they're talking about, vehicles that have been identified as a major contributor, accounting, according to them, for a significant portion of the pollution we're seeing. Delhi recorded, as we said, a staggering 79 lakh vehicles in 2023 to 24. 90% of those are two-wheelers and cars. So we have with us the Executive Director of the Centre for Science and Environment. She actually spoke to CNN News 18, Srishti Chaudhary, about this issue and what she sees it break down as. What are the causes? Take a look. This is a larger conversation.
So the air pollution levels across the national capital region have been surging. The PM 2.5 and PM 10 concentrations have breached the safe limits which are set by the World Health Organization. Today we have with us Ms. Anumita Roy Chaudhary from Centre for Science and Environment, and she has been leading the work on clean air for Delhi for decades now. Anumita, so my first question to you is, we are surrounded by a deadly haze in the national capital region. What is the major reason for it? You said that we need at least 62% reduction in PM 2.5. Could you elaborate?
So what we have seen, and that is scary, that if you look at the long-term trends, then even though there has been a steady decline in the overall pollution levels over a period of time, but even after that reduction, we need another 60% reduction to be able to meet the standards for PM 2.5. And then what it shows up during winter, because you already have such high level, and the moment the atmosphere turns adverse, there is cool and calm condition trapping the air and trapping the pollution, you begin to see this kind of spiral that is happening. But the warning that we are getting from the current winter trend is that this year, despite the fact that the contribution of farm fire, which is a problem during this part of the year, being much less, that even when its contribution has been less than 1 to 3 to 5%, even then air quality of Delhi has become poor to very poor. And that brings out the influence of local sources. And therefore, when we looked at the local sources, and now Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, they do an hourly and a daily forecast of how the relative contribution from different sources are changing. And when we looked at it, that if you set aside the pollution that is coming from outside Delhi, but that is also quite a big chunk of the problem, but if you take only Delhi's pollution and the local sources of Delhi, then the contribution of vehicles to the PM 2.5 levels right now is more than half from vehicles. And that is the most worrying part, that yes, after vehicles you have residential burning, you have peripheral industry, construction activities, open burning. These are also important sources. But for vehicles to be half, more than half of the problem, and what is worrying about that part is that Delhi has also taken a lot of action to control vehicular pollution. Right. Delhi has one of the largest CNG program for public transport, commercial transport, phase out old vehicles, restriction on trucks, BS6 standards, electrification happening. And even after that, we are seeing this. And that points towards the emerging problem in Delhi, which is mobility crisis.
Right. So when we talk of mobility crisis, we also see that the number of buses is still inadequate and the ridership also seems to be going down. So what can we really do to encourage public transport in the national capital to see some changes in the air quality?
First of all, the service level of the public transport is very inadequate. The bus numbers are inadequate. We have not yet met the Supreme Court target of 10,000 buses. We are just a little more than 7,000 right now. But Delhi right now has 45 buses per lakh of population, whereas against the benchmark from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, it should be 60 buses per lakh of population, right? So there's a huge shortfall. But the story is not only about the number of buses. The bus also has to arrive very close to your doorstep. Now, what we found that if you take all the bus stops in Delhi, and that data is available, that less than 1% of Delhi's bus stops where the waiting time for bus is less than 10 minutes, which means for all other bus stops is much higher. That immediately shows that if you have such unreliable, inconvenient service, then why will you see the increase in ridership? And that's why even though bus numbers have started to pick up now, and Delhi has one of the highest number of electric buses today, but despite that, the ridership of bus has not yet reached the pre-pandemic level.
Right. And we also see that the winter level average pollution has been on the rise, and this year also we seeing a steady rise in the PM 2.5 and PM 10 concentrations. Anumita, waste burning is also a very serious problem. It seems to be a low-hanging fruit that we can really work on. What do you have to say on that?
These are some of the low-hanging fruit, that we should have been able to solve by now. All it requires is that the municipal services should be scaled up to such an extent that you are collecting waste from each and every household, segregating it, and then recovering the material out of it, and whatever the waste is getting accumulated in the landfills, you will remediate it. But what we are told that the municipal services are not adequate enough. In fact, almost 25% of Delhi's population have to rely on informal services. So if waste is accumulating out in the open, the easiest way to dispose of it is to just burn it. And that's what is happening. And this has to get fixed very quickly.
All right, with that, it's time to slip into a break. Coming up on the other side, we've got an exciting chat with the cast of Freedom at Midnight. It releases on OTT on the 15th. But here's a look into the story and the special moments behind the scene. That's in a moment from now.
अपने हिस्से
Welcome back to the Breakfast Club. We're now going to take you to a conversation with the cast of Freedom at Midnight. It's the highly anticipated historical series that's set to release on November 15th on Sony Live. So we're going to be having a chat with Siddhant Gupta, he plays Jawaharlal Nehru, Chirag Vohra, who embodies Mahatma Gandhi, Rajendra Chawla, who brings Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel to life, and Arif Zakaria, who portrays Muhammad Ali Jinnah. What does it take to portray such heavy-duty roles? How do you do it when there have been so many other portrayals before this? In this fascinating chat, the cast breaks it down for us. They share all of their insights into making this a reality.
So it's actually based on a book written by Dominique Lepere and Larry Collins' best-selling novel, and explores India's final journey to independence, sort of delving into the complex relationship between these iconic leaders, Gandhi's appeal to Sardar Patel, Jinnah's demand for a separate nation. This series promises to be gripping and informative. So Toya sat down with the cast. Here's how it went.
Arif, if we could just start by asking you a little bit about this, for our audiences who know nothing about what it's like to actually create a period piece. Tell us, so does the script come in front of you and you realize, for example, in your case, you were playing Jinnah's role. Do you look at the ways in which Jinnah has been portrayed over the last, few decades by other actors? Look at that, go, okay, these are pieces I like, these are pieces I don't like, this is where I want to make changes. What is that process like as an actor?
Not really, because the only memory I have of Jinnah is the film Gandhi, I think, where Jinnah was pretty peripheral. Gandhi was the main, and as we all know about the film. But apart from that, I haven't really seen any production, either film or stage, which has Jinnah in a pivotal role or a major part. So that is my ignorance, perhaps. But otherwise, there's a lot of information, of course, on every character. As we all know, Google provides a lot of information. The script provided much more than that because it was much clearer, and the first draft we got was quite outstanding, I should say. So they've covered aspects which are essentially in the book. So I think in Freedom at Midnight, the book by Dominic Lapierre and Larry Collins is taken as a Bible. That from there, all the characters, specifically Jinnah, is derived. So my character is within the context of the book, nothing beyond. So reading the script, interacting, trying to understand the nuances of what was written was essentially a big challenge. And luckily, I had a little bit of time before the shoot started. So one just read and reread and tried to absorb as much information as possible. And then you just try and do it with a lot of trial and error.
I want to ask you though, and maybe Siddhant will take this question to you. You and Chirag and Rajendra, all three of you, with the Nehru, with the Mahatma Gandhi, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, these are characters we've seen a lot, particularly Gandhi. But Siddhant, tell us, when you're creating someone like a Nehru, and you've got, for example, the accent, that you decide it is necessary. It is necessary to have a certain kind of accent, but just to have a certain degree, a certain lilt to the way you do that accent, the way in which he's interacting with the other characters too. How do you make each of those choices? What goes into deciding, okay, this is exactly how I want to make the person?
So you watch the available videos only 50 million times to really understand where that voice comes from. The idea of playing someone who has existed in real life, in reality, it's as an actor, it's a responsibility to reach as close to him as you possibly can. So end of the day, my idea, I didn't know what process to follow. All I knew when this came to me was that I heard this voice, which I don't know how to explain these things, but all I knew is that I can do this. I can achieve this. I can somehow become this human being. And more I researched him, it became about finding his thinking more than, and then the essence follows. And you somehow then you start to hear the voice of the character, and then you become that. So it's a little arty process. I don't know how else to explain this, but it's been quite a journey.
The reason why I'm asking you this question is because you read so much about different actors, different processes, and there
Right.
is, and I'm forgetting the theater word for it, but there is the name to a process of getting totally involved in a character and staying in that character for months and months on end. If
Yeah.
any of you remember what that word is, the school
Method.
theater.
They call
I
it
like
Yes,
method.
I like
there we
being
go.
this character. I like being this character more than I like being myself. There's
Yeah,
a
ask me.
point in
Ask me.
Rajendra, no, tell us why are you saying ask me? Let me tell our audiences you played Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Why do you say ask me again and again?
अरे मतलब ये आदमी सोच सुबह से शुरू करता था, रात तक वहीं रहता था, उसी में नीचे रहता था, उसमें घुसा हुआ रहता था पूरा दिन 12 घंटे। हमारा शॉट खत्म होने के बाद हम थोड़ी मस्तियां करते थे, तो ये भैया अपना सर झुकाए हुए जमीन में पता नहीं क्या देख के देखता था और बस उसी में लगा रहता था। he has that quality to stay for 12 hours and से अगर 15 दिन का शेड्यूल है तो 15 दिन वो जमीन में ही घुसा रहेगा।
मतलब method acting to a whole other.
हाँ,
I
और
mean,
मेरा
I don't call it method or whatever, but at the end of the day, I chose this work to do this. And he used to come to me, Rajendra ji used to come to me. I still मेरे मुंह से वल्लभ भाई निकलता है. I think I called him Bapu, Chirag Bapu, and then Rajendra ji, Vallabh bhai through the thing. Jinnah, I didn't really interact with her. Like the track is such, we should like keep a little distance. And then, yeah. So it became all of that, and then he used to come and ungli karo me after shots, and I was like, but that should be fun. Yeah, it was all nice. Yeah.
Wait, so can I ask you, and Rajendra ji, maybe I'll take this to you, Chirag ji, you come in too. Tell us, because we don't know this as audiences, when you're acting as characters who are, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years old, did those people carry themselves in different ways? Like right from the way you're breathing, the way you're enunciating, all of that needs to change, right?
राइट, एब्सोल्युटली। क्योंकि 50 साल, यहाँ तक 50 साल की उम्र की बात है तो 50 का तो मैं हूँ, तो मुझे उस तरफ ज्यादा देखने की जरूरत नहीं थी। हाँ, अब जब मैंने यंगर वर्जन प्ले किया तो उसमें एक अलग से एनर्जी डालने की, वॉइस को यंगर बनाने की एक कोशिश रही हमेशा। जो यंगर पोर्शन है वो बहुत इस शो में बहुत कम देर तक आता है, तो वो कैरी करना मेरे लिए बहुत ज्यादा मुश्किल नहीं था। एक दूसरा, वल्लभ भाई की स्पीचेस जब मैंने सुनी थी तो उनके बोलने का तरीका, वो उनके पास एक बहुत हैवी गुजराती एक्सेंट था उनके स्पीच में, तो उसको फॉलो करने की कोशिश की गई। और वो चाहे मतलब आज हो सकता है जब नेता लोग भाषण देते हैं तो बहुत अलग तरीके से, ड्रामेटिक तरीके से उसको बोलने की कोशिश करते हैं, लेकिन वल्लभ भाई जैसे नॉर्मल बात करते हैं, जैसे मैं और आप बात कर रहे हैं, वैसे ही उनकी पब्लिक एड्रेसिंग मीटिंग में भी वो ऐसे ही बात करते हैं। हाँ भाई, करना है तो कर लो, नहीं तो फिर जाने दो, छोड़ो ना बात। हमको अगर पाकिस्तान चाहिए होगा तो हम पाकिस्तान ले लेंगे, तुम्हारा पाकिस्तान तुमको। इतना ईज में थे वो।
Can I ask you this? We were as a team discussing this, recently, anytime you've had in the last few years a historical drama come out, whether it's a movie or a TV series. It's happening so often now that, the film gets caught in controversy. People are really, really committed to, saying that, okay, something is the correct way to show a certain character. As an actor deciding to do something like this, is that now something that, is something that you as an actor are thinking, okay, I need to look at if this portrayal was correctly done. Do you feel that pressure at all?
यानी महात्मा गांधी का कैरेक्टर पोर्ट्रे करना अपने आप में एक प्रेशर तो
बहुत ही बड़ा, हाँ,
बहुत बड़ा प्रेशर फील तो होता ही है, बट एट द सेम टाइम हमारे पास गूगल यानी यूट्यूब पर इतने सारे रेफरेंसेस हैं। सो अगर मैं ये कहूँ कि उस रेफरेंस का, ऑफ कोर्स मैंने बार बार लगातार उनके वीडियोस देखे हैं, उनकी स्पीचेस सुनी हैं, और यानी विथ फिर ये होता है कि जब हम लोग रीडिंग स्टेज पर थे तो काफी यानी वॉइस जो क्वालिटी जो है, गांधी जी की वॉइस क्वालिटी, उनके जो पंक्चुएशन हुआ करते थे, दैट वाज एट टाइम्स वेरी ऑड। अगर आप गांधी जी की स्पीच सुने तो आपको समझ में आता है कि उनके जो पंक्चुएशन है वो बहुत ऑड है, और आपको एट द सेम टाइम आपको जो डायलॉग्स लिखे गए हैं, जो उसको करेक्ट वे में और करेक्ट तरीके से अगर आप बोले तो ही उसकी इफेक्ट होगी।
इसी प्रश्न पे I just want to go a little further. Arif, tell us, what is it like to be on the set of a historical drama? So what I mean when I ask you that is, are there, for example, fact checkers who are sitting there and, making sure that, for example, if one of you is saying a word, to know that, okay, that word was a word that was being used back in the time. What is the process like to be in a part of a set like this? How different is it from other sets?
We had somebody watching what we speak. And as Chirag said, all the tonalities and all helped. What helped it was the earlier process as to reading, rereading, and seeing what actually sounds well, what sounds correct, and the inflections were working or not working, so on and so forth. But being on a set of a historical show like this is cumbersome, because you, first of all, you're in the costume, you're sweating, you have very unique attires, which is not there right now. And there were a lot of fact checkers, and in fact, Nikhil's team of assistants are very good. They were very keyed in, Hitesh and the other girls. So they were keyed into what we were saying, keyed into how it is to be said. The inflections are coming or not coming.
Can I ask? There's a scene in the first episode which is so fun, where you're all standing and you're waiting for an elevator to come. You're all
Yeah.
you're all playing out each of these different leaders, and you're all bantering. And it was such a beautiful scene, because it was almost like, when you have a deserted island with 5 famous personalities on the deserted island, they're all interacting with each other. And I want to ask, and Siddharth, I'll take that to you. What was rehearsing and figuring out a scene like that? A scene that in itself, it is so exciting.
Best part about this entire journey has been our director. I must say that. Because I'll tell you why. He's really gifted. And thankfully, we all, Arif, Chirag, Rajendraji, everyone, we all somehow, since day one, I felt we've all found something very close to the character. And you enter the room and you feel that energy through the actors. That was the best part about this entire thing. And so, no matter what rehearsal, whatever you do, you don't know what choreography of the scene is going on in the director's mind. All you have to do is just hold that character inside of you and just come to the set, and he would just, he would see it in a different light, each scene. Like, for instance, this first scene that you're talking about, I still remember we were walking and suddenly he gave me sunglasses to enter. And suddenly from being that entire heated up atmosphere, it became a little cooler. So just the little elements, and then we entered, and League was coming from this side, and we were coming from this side, and then it was like a clash. What do you do? Like you said, like you rightfully said, it's like being left on a deserted island. What do? You take a little dig at each other. That's all you do, and it was in the lines. So I think end of the day, it all just came in the moment. Nothing was, for me, I can say. I mean, it's. This time it was very less rehearsed.
I want to say, I think we've run out of time. I want to say good luck to all of you for this. Feeling a big night. We'll tell our audiences to take a look at it. Obviously, right after this, we'll tell them a little bit more about it. But it is not too often that one gets to sit down with Nehru, Gandhi, Vallabhbhai Patel, and of course, Jinnah, and ask them questions. So thank you for taking out the time.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we bring you a special segment on the financial markets powered by Money Control Pro, Money Control's premium destination for investing and business insights. Let's start with markets and how they're pegged to open this morning. Indian markets are expected to open flat as indicated by the GIFT Nifty trends. US markets closed on a high note following a rate reduction and clean sweep by the Republican Party. Asian markets are trading mixed as weak China data offsets optimism from the US markets. Gold and oil trade marginally lower in early Asian market trades as well.
Okay, now let's take a look at one sector in particular, and what we're focusing on today is the hotel industry. It's in its Goldilocks phase as we speak, and that phase is showing no sign of abating. Most players are reporting robust pricing growth as well as improved occupancy levels across the board. Now, demand has bounced back significantly. This is post-temporary disruption. We saw that in the first quarter of financial year 2025. Outlook for the second half of financial year 25 is strong given higher wedding dates. We're of course going to see wedding season kick into full gear. We'll be focusing on that on the show. But what we're also seeing is rising foreign tourist arrivals that take place this time of the year. And you can log into Money Control Pro, remember, to find out more about what's in store for India's hospitality sectors and various other actionable insights on the markets. Remember, Money Control Pro is the premier destination for all the investing views and financial insights that you're ever going to need. We already gave you a little tease into what we're going to be taking a look at into the next few days of the week. Wedding season, how you can prepare for it, what big companies are saying are the upcoming trends, Dhol, Baja, Barat, the whole thing. We're going to be taking a look at it right here on the show starting tomorrow.
Big weddings, small weddings, intimate weddings, destination weddings, what trends are really making waves. We've got you covered this season. Catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you.
वो मिस्टर विकास